offline or something like that.
As far as I know, they are both working. My Twitch chat is rolling along just fine, and
yeah, mine is too.
Mine's work. Oh, the screen is frozen.
Just hit refresh, everybody. That should do it. If that's all it is.
That's what I'm seeing. Is the screen is frozen.
Yeah, you just have to. They're just going to have to refresh their screen.
Yeah, it was just one or two people. I wouldn't have interrupted, Paul. I'm sorry, Paul.
Well, that works.
Both sides. I thought, wait a minute, are we having a problem? Are we actually getting out to the rest of the world? So, okay. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, please.
No, that's good. I'm learning too from this. It's a new experience for me. I like this. It's really impressive. So, I was really concerned. What happened? Here we have a young man. His job in France is to teach something called moral and civic education class. His job was to teach the concept of freedom of expression. Now, this gets extremely important, and I gotta actually go back and, I think. Okay, so there. Yeah, I have to mute.
Paul, just for everybody that's not familiar with this incident, approximately when did it occur?
October 16th this year.
Yep.
So we're only talking a few months ago.
Right.
That's the scary truth. Probably the most concerning thing here is that it's a teacher doing his job. The teacher wasn't doing anything wrong. It wasn't, in fact, he's actually not teaching anything that he's not required to. Now, this is the important thing to understand. The teacher was required to teach a lesson on the freedom of expression, where he showed his class of 13 and 14-year-olds the controversial cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad from the Charlie Hebdo cartoons we're talking about.
Right.
They like to constantly refer to this as the satirical newspaper. I don't care what kind of newspaper it is. I may not always agree with it because they do have, I don't think you need to execute people who make insulting cartoons. I think, my way of dealing with people is not to have them executed, but to pray to my God, which is stronger than I am, to deal with people. I mean, they can make funny pictures of me all day long. I'll probably laugh.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm probably not going to, I might get insulted. I might get angry, but I'm not going to do anything more than pray because my God's bigger than mine. And if you want to mess with him, that's up with you.
That's up to you. Exactly.
Yeah. So again, the big thing here, which is interesting, is Samuel Paty actually got reprimanded as a result of this class. You want to hear why he was reprimanded? Because he gave the students an option. He said he didn't show the pictures to the entire class. In fact, he suggested that those who might be shocked at the pictures could leave the room for their own protection. Oh. So because he did that, he got reprimanded because he didn't show them to the entire class.
So what you have here is again, just more evidence that the guy is being forced to teach this in a sense, and he's forced to make sure that all the kids in the class get taught this information, which means he's just doing his job.
Yeah, it's exactly it. He was doing his job, and this is the thing that I think most people don't understand. He was doing what he did every year at this time. This is the cool thing about being a social studies teacher. I did this for 20 years in the city of Rochester, New York. I loved the job, but it's the thing. You get really good at this stuff. The thing I love with this kind of thing is the discussions. And this is what Samuel Paty talks about. He loved discussions. Getting the kids to talk about controversial things is exciting. It's one of the reasons why I liked working with high school kids versus elementary. I love the thought process that went into things. So this actually becomes extremely important because they have something called La Cité. A La Cité is a law that governs all of France. It promotes secularism over any kind of religion. And that's extremely important to understand at this time because this is being fought against every day now. It used to be that you were not allowed to wear any religious expression in a public place, but that has changed. So only those people who are Muslim are allowed to wear. Now, this is the truth. You're only if you're Muslim are you allowed to wear Islamic garb in public. That means a woman is allowed to wear a hijab in public, but the person who wants to wear a cross wasn't allowed. This is the truth of the matter. In fact, they were at one time, and not long ago, actually holding people, and fining them for wearing a cross, or even we're talking. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that go with this.
Right.
So the truth of the matter, again, this started, and then the next day, something happened. A girl whose father, so a father of a girl who was in his class, but not even present on the day this happened, that he presented this material, ended up claiming that. Yeah, let me just read this word for word. So, the daughter tells the father supposedly that Mr. Paty had asked all Muslim pupils to raise their hand and leave the class so he could show remaining students a picture of the Prophet naked. After learning this was not true, this parent continued to share the lie on Islamic radio shows.
Of course.
Now, at some point, Patty's killer contacts the girl's father. So he is also under arrest.
Now, Paul, I just want to interject something here. Just to reinforce this with everybody, you do understand that in Islam, it's tradition for you to lie to benefit Islam, which not only includes your business dealing, but also includes the takeover of other lands.
It's not just tradition; it's actually law. You are required to lie if there is a cause, a legal obligation under Islam. So so they are going to lie if they can get anything that will help Islam. So in this case, there is a required sense to lie, and this is I don't think people understand that. My suggestion, if you want to get a clue, go buy a book called Reliance of the Traveler spelled with 2 L's. Picked it up and I would say when you buy this, it's about $50. It's worth every penny. Pick it up. It's English translation of Umdat Salik, and it is a mind blower. I still remember being offended, sickened, and saddened by reading this. It still hits me. So I want to also go back to this. When this murder, when this was going on, I should say there was an organization, an anti-Islamic phobia organization that made an even bigger ruckus. The government of France has since forcibly closed this organization, the Collectif contre Islamophobie in France. Now, the French government has now officially disbanded this organization, considering it connected to, I would say, anti-France, or they might as well say a promotion of terror or sedition. So they've closed this organization. It's not allowed to operate. So this killer, again, his name is, I'm not going to say his name in here. His name should never be mentioned. He killed Samuel Paty 11 days afterwards. When he did this, he attempted to bribe several students for the name, for someone to point him out, I should say. He couldn't, he had to have someone point him out. So there were several students who said no, and there are actually 4 students who gave in and said yes. A 15-year-old student is actually pointed out by the media as the one who did point things out. I think there was 3 other students that were also designated and arrested and are facing charges for complicity in terrorist murder. Now, that's actually official as of last week that they're facing those charges. That day, October 16th, after Mr. Paty was, keep this in mind, beheaded, this terrorist from Chechnya, a Muslim migrant from Chechnya, took pictures and boasted of his act of jihad on social media. He had 2 knives on him at that time, one 14 inches. He also had an airsoft gun, which he fired several times, responding officers basically begging them to shoot him, which they did. This started something, more publicity for what? The more publicity it gave teachers a voice, unfortunately, to share their fears. Now, I like my friend Vlad Tepes and Rare Foundation. They have a video of French teachers living in fear. And one of them, if you go to 3speak.com, I believe it is, it's number 3, speak.com. You can look up Rare Foundation, RAIR Foundation, and you can find what they do there is they take European news items and they share them with subtitling. And so you can see and hear. If you understand the language, great. If you don't, you can get the subtitles, and they're 100% accurate.
And I can confirm the videos out there are very, very interesting, and it will cause concern, but you need to watch them.
Yeah. This one video that really bothered me is a 5th grade teacher. She's on the news in Paris, and she's talking about a part of the curriculum that she's required to teach as a 5th grader. This curriculum they're talking about Muhammad confronting the Jewish communities in Yathrib, which is where Muhammad moves to after leaving Mecca. Now, her students don't believe this ever happened. Why? Because and this is something important to understand, is that most Muslims never read the Quran. They don't, because they don't read Arabic. So they can't accept actual factual historical things that are even recorded by Muslims who teach other Muslims. So, yeah, unless they've been told this, they just don't believe it. And so she was threatened. She talks about a wave of hate being formed against her. And one student says to her, "I'll send ISIS to you." And she said the student came back the next day with a knife. It was her other students who protected her and kept her safe. Now, this happened 3 months before Samuel Paty was killed. So keep this in mind. There are several more incidents that happened as a result of Samuel Paty being killed. And several teachers have come out and talked about the dangers of teaching things. This gets really scary. Now, I want to talk to you about what I could not do here in the United States. So I think every teacher, social studies teacher, you take an oath to, when you're a teacher, you have certain obligations, and social studies teachers have an obligation to teach cause and effect. It's actually written directly into your obligations as a social studies teacher. If you do any research to find out what social studies teachers are supposed to do, that's one of the number one things. You teach cause and effect. This happens, then this happens. And that's one of the reasons why we say simple things like, if you don't learn your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And I don't know of a social studies teacher who doesn't teach that. So let me tell you what I could not do. In the United States of America, Obama, or let's call him Obama, required the entire country to be subject to the Common Core curriculum, which is now dead, thank you, God. But the curriculum required every 10th grade social studies teacher in the country to teach about the Armenian genocide. When this was rolled out in Rochester, New York, I asked in front of all the social studies teachers in our district, now this is a city school district, if we were to teach this, are we, as professional educators, to teach the cause of the Armenian genocide? I says, if we do this, we have to talk about the 1915 fatwa, which actually caused the Armenian genocide. And I said, I have a copy of this. I'm willing to give it to anyone. Are you also willing to read the source, the primary source documents on this, which would be Ambassador Morgenthau's story? I'm willing to share that with anybody. My question is, I said to this is the guy who's in charge of the social studies department for our district. I said to him, are you willing that we should tell our Muslim students that they may have an obligation to be committing an act of jihad?
Oh, goodness.
Well, I was told, this is what I was told. There was no answer. This is the thing that bothered me the most. He said, and you will communicate with your principal anything that you teach that is controversial. I said, it's not controversial, it's factual. It's historical. It happened. This document was kept secret until the 1960s. That's 50 years it was hidden from the public because they consider it so dangerous.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's here in the United States, we kept it from the public. My first finding of this copy of this was in I can't think of his name right now. The doctor who wrote about jihad. His book had this in the back, and I took it and I actually called and asked for permission to share this, and I got permission because he doesn't have the copyright to it, and they just wanted to make sure I wasn't getting in any trouble. And I only had 5 teachers out of the 50 or so that were present say they wanted copies. That severely bothers me. Can you imagine teaching something that you have no knowledge of and not doing any research? You have somebody there who's willing to give you the materials. Well, see, the thing was that I am I'm not supposed to know all this stuff. I'm the special ed teacher who pushes in. But yes, I do know all this. And they do consider me the best source. They did consider me the best source on some of these things. So yeah, but they didn't want to talk about the truth. Now, again,
well, it doesn't surprise me, with education the way it is, and I've told you before, I don't know if you remember this, my wife is a special education teacher and has been, and now she's teaching online. But, in education, we obviously have a problem. A lot of people don't want, just like we have a problem with the left. They don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to see the truth. And when you try to put the truth out there, you get banned or censored on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, So it doesn't surprise me that, that was I am actually surprised that you had 5 people come to you for information, to be honest. That's surprising.
I guess I look at this differently, and maybe it's naive, but social studies teachers in general tend to be conservative, and that's factual, because the difference with social studies teachers is we are supposed to know history. The other thing with social studies teachers is you can't. Let's look at, again, we're talking about high school. In high school, you have English teachers, social studies teachers, you have chemistry teachers, you have your science teachers, chemistry, biology, physics, you'll have shop teachers that teach certain things. Every single one of those teachers, except for the social studies teacher, is specifically certified in a field. Now, the social studies teachers are the only true generalists. Now, you can't, this is the thing that I've actually talked about. I don't blame social studies teachers for not having specific information. My reasoning is that it's impossible for them to know everything. I mean, this is where I would like to see a new requirement for social studies teachers, that they specialize in an area. I don't care if it's Crusader history, if it's medieval history, if it's whatever. But the idea would be that you would get enough people that specialized that they would have enough information. For me, I could say I have enough information on religion to get that specialization. So I think that's extremely important, especially when they're looking at textbooks. I looked at the textbook for the Rochester City School District and found 25 errors, very serious errors on, this is a couple chapters. And I mean, we're not talking 20, 30 pages. It's maybe under 20 pages. And these are severe errors.